Welcome to another edition of the Ascension Football Show. I am Jassy Marik in the host's seat today, so to speak, in the absence of the regular host, Mr. Kieran Edwards. However, he's not too far away. Actually, he's on set today, our main guest, as we explore the TTSL, the Trinidad and Tobago Super League, and its recent issues regarding the election, which was held roughly about a month ago. Now, Mr. Edwards will be joining to discuss his side of the story as it pertains to what transpired at that election. And we are hearing in the pipelines, well, rather not so much in the pipelines, but we are hearing that the matter could soon be arbitrated at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. So stick around. The Ascension Football Show starts now.
We need to continue to do these things to let persons understand the importance of the Constitution.
So they were not immediately reinstated as Constitution.
When you're playing Super League, the next step is to play professionally.
So as mentioned previously, we are joined today by a TTSL, or Trinidad and Tobago Super League presidential candidate, Mr. Kieran Edwards. Kieran, thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to put you on the other side of things, so to speak, and grill you really on what's happening with the Trinidad and Tobago Super League.
It's a pleasure to be on this side of the chair. They say when you're given, you must be able to take. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Right. So, of course, we here to discuss the Trinidad and Tobago Super League. You were a presidential candidate in the previous election, which you are now, or the results of which you are now contesting. And we are hearing that it may even go all the way to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. But before we get into the whole crux of things, what exactly are you contesting? And then we'll get back to the issues of 2018 come forward.
I'm contesting currently the process of the elections, the persons that were allowed to vote and the persons that were denied the privilege to vote. I'm contesting that format. There was a clear process to be followed. It was not followed, and it gave an unfair advantage to someone. The incumbent, the president currently, Mr. Lee Davis, a clear advantage was given by not allowing the clubs to be allowed to be part of the AGM at that meeting for the vote, and that is what I'm contesting. And I think it's a clear matter.
And and the way you see it, the Court of Arbitration for Sport could be that final port, so to speak, for adjudicating on this matter.
Yeah, as the constitution of the TTSL states is basically, if you have a dispute within the TTSL, you can then take that matter to an independent tribunal, arbitration tribunal, that is set up by the board of the Super League, and that's Article 42. And if at that point you are not satisfied, the only other place you can take because taking it to the local courts is forbidden in terms of the bylaws of
and we saw that of course happen with the whole normalization at the TTFA level.
Yes. Yeah. So we would now then take the matter to CAS in terms of, but the real situation in terms of how CAS is even being mentioned currently is that at this present moment, there's no independent tribunal, arbitration tribunal for the Super League set up. And the Constitution goes on to say in 43, if there's no tribunal set up at any given time, you are then now, your next protocol is at CAS. And basically we are committed and comfortable with taking that action if the Super League. So I did deliver a letter to the board of management of the Super League indicating such.
What brought us to this point in the first place? Now, you mentioned that you are contesting the process of that last AGM and the fact that some members were denied their rights to vote at that meeting. But as I understand it, that's an issue that stems all the way back to 2018, when some of these clubs were suspended by the previous or a previous incarnation of the Trinidad and Tobago Super League executive. Now, what prompted that suspension, and why are you even contesting the validity of it now, 3 years later?
The issue of me contesting the whole scenario of the AGM and even thinking about, we talking about 2018, 2019 there was a suspension, 2020 there was a suspension, and we're now talking, we're in 2021, and the reason for me having any issues, because we're talking about 2018, it started, this whole fiasco started, and it should have been sorted out then. And we are here, it was not sorted out back then, and we are now in 2021, and it still was an issue at the AGM. It was sorted out after, but the issue is that it was not to be done at that time. It was supposed to be done as business arising from the previous general meeting. And you get that sorted out. Apologies should be made to the clubs and move on. Instead, it was left to the end of the AGM, the clubs being reinstated, and basically a warning by persons to say, you see what we did, don't do it again, you know the consequences. And it's really not being in agreement with certain persons had really left those clubs in that situation. They weren't, as they say, part of the boys' club, and they were looking at things independently, and they were basically punished for that for the last 3 years.
That in itself is a really strong statement, because as we understand, or as was made publicly known, is that these clubs, some of them at least, were not in compliance. As we know, the TTFA stipulated by CONCACAF and FIFA around that time, 2018 or thereabouts, stipulated to have their clubs meet certain benchmarks for compliance and in order to bring football into a more professional football administration, that is, into a more professional era. So the statement that these clubs were not in, at least in favor of some members of the Super League, is in fact a really strong one. And of course, if you could justify that, that's all well and good. But this issue of compliance, how do you look upon it?
It's a serious issue. The TTFA that you said that is interested in being compliant and making sure that their members are compliant, they are not compliant to CONCACAF. So as much as the issue of compliance is very serious, let us don't pay the picture that FIFA has a moral authority to oversee and to punish persons for not being compliant where they are not compliant to CONCACAF. And I've been saying it over and over. Persons in charge of the TTFA, currently the Normalization Committee, it would be a shame if after 2 years, 24 months, that the TTFA is not compliant to CONCACAF, and FIFA and CONCACAF place them there to oversee the management of it. And I just wanted to make that clear. But to say that the clubs were suspended just based on compliance is not true, because the suspensions, and we'll go through it later in the show, the suspensions being handed out really had little to do with being compliant. In the initial stage, the TTFA would have made reservations and made claims on saying that they want to suspend various clubs on the grounds of compliancy. But that was never done. A letter came from the TTFA stating that there are no clubs were officially suspended by a general meeting on compliance. Nor had the TTFA suspended any club on compliance. So the fact of talking the whole Super League situation and bringing it back to compliance because of a meeting that would have happened in 2018, it's a bit disingenuous in terms of the approach, and keep on saying, well, it's a concern, compliance is a concern. We know that they lack thereof in terms of clubs, in terms of associations where it comes in Trinidad. So we bring it and paint everybody with this big brush. Mm-hmm. But that is not the fact of how the clubs were actually suspended.
So then what was the real issue at that point in time, as you recall it?
So in fact, the first issue of compliance, there was an issue of compliance in 2018. The board at the general meeting made a decision on persons not being compliant in 2018, but the official suspension came in 2019 when the board um, suspended the first set of clubs in 2019. And the suspension was based on, it's a decision taken by the board of the Super League your to suspend your membership of this league due to the club failure to participate in the TTSL competition for 2 years, 2018 and 2019. At the next general meeting, this would be rectified, right? And that was the basis of the first suspension. Um, but at that time, the clubs did not miss 2 seasons. They would have missed the 2018 season, but the 2019 season did not occur just yet. They were still in the process of getting the 2019 seasons together. So the membership, when they called the EGM to ratify the suspension, the membership told them at that EGM that there were no clubs missing 2 seasons. It's not 2 years, but 2 seasons, and you need to bring it back when in fact they missed 2 seasons. And the chairman then said, okay, he understands that, and we will leave it till the end of the 2019 season, which I think was somewhere in December 6th, somewhere there in December the 19th, I think was the finals of the Super League for 2019.
Right.
I'm left to be corrected on that. But it was left till the end of that season. So at that AGM, the members said, no, we do have grounds to suspend the members. Their membership supposed to be immediately reinstated. That's based on the constitution of the Super League. That was not done. They then had an AGM where no discussion on the matter came up, but the clubs were not able to be part of that AGM. So we having the club suspended in 2019, going to EGM. At the EGM, the members said no, they are not officially suspended. You have to get a 2/3 majority. This is to the constitution of the Super League. That did not happen. They then say, well, all right, we'll leave it until 2019. In that same 2019, end of 2019 season, now, you have an AGM. It has not come back up to the general meeting to suspend them officially. And they were not allowed to be part of the meeting.
So they were not immediately reinstated as constitution.
As for the constitution, because let me get to the constitution of the Super League that would lead to that. So the constitution actually says, Article 9.1, the general meeting is responsible for suspension of a member. The board of directors may, however, suspend a member for seriously violating its obligations as a member with immediate effect. In this case, the suspension shall last until the next general meeting, unless the board has lifted it during the period, right? The board of directors may suspend a person on a provisional basis. So when that is done in terms of the board suspension, they then now have to come in with Article 9.2, where the suspension shall be confirmed by the next general meeting by 2/3 of the members present and eligible to vote. And if it's not confirmed, the suspension is automatically lifted. That's the constitution of the Super League, basically stating that the members that were suspended in 2019, by not getting a 2/3 majority at that meeting to suspend them, they should have been automatically reinstated in the Super League. So when coming to the AGM in 2019 and not being allowed to be part of that AGM, that is where the first wrong occurred. But persons knew that. But it worked in their favor, and persons were not strong enough. The clubs didn't understand because they keep on using things vaguely. So at that EGM, because the first matter wasn't brought properly, because you're suspended, that matter is supposed to be brought to the members
for
to
ratification,
vote.
yeah.
For the vote. If not, they are automatically there. So when they brought the matter and they say, hey, the grounds for suspension is not there. They then move on to say, all right, we will prolong the suspension of the board. We will not ratify by the membership here, but we will prolong the suspension by the board. Always
For the next AGM.
for the next, no, until the end of 2019. So they're not even concerned that it has a next general meeting in between. They're just prolonging it until the end of 2019, and then we'll come back to it. So in fact, they then suspended them. You remember, this is December, the league is over. The board then sent forth another letter in 2020, January 2020. And
When the league is done.
When the league is done. And the grounds of that letter now is as follows. Subsequent to correspondence issued by your club dated 2020, dated the 22nd of September 2019, we hereby advise that a decision was taken by the board of the Super League to suspend your membership in the league due to your club failure to participate in the TTSL competition for 2 years, 2018-2019. And they then went on to say an EGM would be had to ratify the decision, which did not come in 2020 until the 6th of December. Because of obviously the president resigning and the whole issue of normalization on the TTFA and that.
So would you say, or is it fair to say that the members, quote unquote suspended, were fooled into missing an extra season, so that this suspension could then be applied, even if it was wrongfully done?
Well, I wouldn't say fool. They were, after that meeting where the EGM, that persons would have known that it's not 2 seasons we're missing. Literally days later, the 2019 season began. So clubs weren't ready.
They didn't have enough time to do registration, etc.
Put things in place.
Right.
Remember, they were suspended all the time.
Right.
And everything in the Super League was going on
without them.
So when you come to this meeting now and you realize I was suspended wrongfully and there's no grounds to be suspended, then you're hearing days later the league is going to start. And if we don't take part in this league, then obviously we miss. So clubs then did not take part for various reasons. They were playing, it had clubs playing other leagues and had other obligations. And we know there's no big wealth of monies within the football fraternity.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to take your things in priority. So they didn't take part in the league. Clubs didn't take part in the league. And then they came with this letter. So in 2020, they were now January the 23rd, the January 27th of 2020, they were now officially suspended. This is the first time they are officially suspended. And in that letter, they said that EGM would be had, which did not come because of what transpired. But then they moved to AGM in the 6th of December 2020. And this is the first time the official suspension came up to be ratified by the general meeting.
And was it in fact ratified at that meeting?
Well, we'll get to it, have it in black and white. So let's see what that meeting decided. So at that meeting, in that December 6, 2020 annual general meeting, the decision was made. So when there was placed to the membership to make the decision, there was some discussion from Mr. Downer, from members, from delegates, would have had discussions on the matter in terms of various things for and against the suspension. But then it was placed to a vote where 8 clubs were present, 4 voted in favor of the suspension, 3 against, and 1 abstained. At that point, when that happened, immediately the clubs should have been reinstated. We're talking 4-3-1, right? So you did not acquire the 2/3 majority needed to continue the suspension at that point. So when that happened, the chairman then proceeded to say, all right, we won the vote in terms of a majority, not looking on the constitution, on his own constitution, to understand that that it needed 2/3 and the club's supposed to be immediately reinstated. Mind you, the clubs weren't part of this AGM, because they were suspended, and they tell them they didn't even give them afford them the
courtesy
of
being
there
present,
and being able to observe. So the clubs weren't there, and so they couldn't make any complaints or any
contribution whatsoever.
None. They couldn't object to say, well, at this point you didn't get a 2/3 majority, so now I'm reinstated and I should be part of this meeting immediately. So when that happened, that occurred, the then chairman said we would extend the suspension even further with some stipulations,
Such
as compliance. So they're saying if you now become compliant to TTFA within 6 months, we'll allow you to come back into the league. Your suspension has nothing to do with being compliant to TTFA. So we're talking you suspended for not playing for 2 seasons, and then you're saying if you become compliant to TTFA,
you'll be allowed back in.
I'll give you a blight to be back in, when I'm not even suspended in the first place. And this is where the second wrong occurred. For clubs not being part of that meeting, and then 2, the vote did not acquire the 2/3 majority, and you're still telling them, you're giving them other reasons how you'll come back into the Super League, and the reasons you're giving has nothing to do with the suspension given. So that is the basis of saying the clubs were actually not suspended, and then it was cleared up at the 2021 AGM, which we had with the election, where that's really where my issue lies.
Well, we'll get to that 2021 AGM in a short bit. For now, though, the Ascension show will take a short break, and we'll be back to discuss with Kieran Edwards, 2021 Trinidad and Tobago Super League presidential candidate, about the ongoings of that particular meeting just a couple weeks ago in October.
Pest control is a pain, but you don't have to go it alone. If you're a business that needs someone who will fix your problems point blank, go with the brand that's tested. Go with Terminix. Born almost a century ago in Memphis, Tennessee, Terminix International's mission has been to spread its innovations across the world through its integrated pest and termite management system, reducing the infestation of pests and vermin. Our Trinidad franchise neutralizes the threat of tropical insects and ensures that companies, from food production to hospitality, protect their investment and get the maximum value from our relationship. And we've been doing it well for over 20 years. Termites and pests are relentless, but they're no match for Terminix. Contact us today for a free consultation and quote, and let's introduce you to convenience. Protect your premises today. Choose a service provider that persists. Talk to Terminix.
Pests bothering you? Call Terminix at 672-5007 or 672-0042, or visit our website at terminix.co.tt for a free quote and consultation. Join our fight against pests.
Get in the game with Ascension. Quality for champions.
Hey, Ascension! Ascension! Premium quality and style make you stand out all the time. Ascension is quality for champions. Ascension fit is always right. Take your game to higher heights. Ascension got the quality for champions. So everybody say, hey, oh, we wearing Ascension when we play. To run out on the field in style. What's the brand that we want? Ascension! 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 We wearing what we wearing is Ascension. Quality for a champion. Ascension! We wearing what we wearing is Ascension.
Get in the game with Ascension. Quality for champions. Lasso Frame Maritime Limited, the best in marina services. At our facilities, security checks ensures that all vehicles are secured. Our newly renovated bathrooms are always kept in a clean working order. Need repairs and maintenance? We have you covered. Our qualified workmen will get the job done. Boat storages, From our marina, you can easily push off for a family sailing trip. Or out fishing with the boys. Or a fun DDI experience with friends. Boat repairs, secured parking, extensive camera system, boat charters, boat rentals, down the island parties. Contact us at 1-868-634-1653. Lasso Frame Maritime Limited, the best in marina services. Life's better on a boat.
Amante Del Cafe is located at Magnificent Mall, number 271 Southern Main Road, McBean, Couva. Amante Del Cafe. Happiness begins with brew.
Welcome back to the Ascension Football Show, where we are talking today, in today's edition, the Trinidad and Tobago Super League and several contentious issues dating all the way back to 2018. We're here with 2021 presidential candidate, though, Kieran Edwards, who brought us up to speed as matters pertaining to that 2018 period, all the way up to the 2021 annual general meeting, which took place just about roughly a little over a month ago to elect a new president. The results of which Mr. Edwards is now contesting, even thinking about taking it to the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Switzerland. And Kieran, just explain to us, what again is your particular issue with how things went in that 2021 AGM, as opposed to how you think it should have gone according to the Constitution and all other governing documents?
Well, the main issue for me is that when I got into the whole issue of running and I decided to run, I then created a manifesto and then engaged every eligible club to vote. So I would have engaged 21 clubs with my manifesto in terms of presenting what are my plans for the Super League. 21 clubs. Because when I did my research on the Super League, I knew that the clubs weren't suspended. You'll get fees from certain clubs and clubs would have engaged and say, well, we like your ideas and whatnot. But until you go into that vote and votes are cast and you count it, you don't know how things will turn out. Engaging the clubs and knowing that there are 21 clubs eligible to vote at that annual general meeting in terms of a president, to elect the new president of the Super League. And coming to the annual general meeting, I know it's supposed to be a formality for the clubs to be given full reinstatement. And seeing at that point, at that juncture of when that issue was supposed to be sorted out, as I said umpteen times, apologies supposed to be given at that point as well. Not just the issue saying that you are reinstated. A wrong was done for years.
And whoever is the person in charge of that meeting, chairing that meeting, whenever these clubs are reinstated, should apologize for the wrong.
And the formality you're referring to, of course, has to deal with the fact that days before the actual meeting, the TTFA would have indicated that these clubs were wrongfully suspended in the first place.
And that's part of it. That's just not the overall thing. We're talking about, we had the AGM in 2020, December 2020, where 2/3 majority was not attained to confirm the suspension as per the constitution for the clubs. They did not get the 2/3 majority. So you're coming to this meeting, before you get into the meeting, you're seeing a TTFA send out a letter saying these clubs were never suspended by the TTFA.
Forget about 2019. We're going all the way back to 2018 to say that they were not.
This is a TTFA thing. All records show that no clubs, there was a meeting, they had discussions about it. All records show no club was suspended by the TTFA. This is serious information. This is serious business here. This is the livelihood of persons. We're talking 7 clubs with over 30 persons. We're talking youth teams falling up because of this decision. This is a direct effect on communities, because the part that the responsibility of football in communities, high risk. We're talking about Marbella Crisis Center being part of this. The name alone is supposed to let you know how serious this group and the playing football is to this organization and to the community of Marbella. And you're talking about you're kicking them out wrongfully. We need to take this serious, and that is the reason that I have so much passion behind it, because it's serious business, and persons mustn't take it lightly and say, well, it happened and let me sweep it under the rug. We are in a process of normalization, and we have to take these things seriously. And going back to the meeting, the TTFA would have sent a letter stating no clubs were suspended. The minutes of the previous annual general meeting, the general meeting following the suspension, did not give the confirmation of the suspension of the 2/3 needed. I'm saying this is a formality. The clubs weren't there present. They lobbied to be present at this AGM in the 2021 AGM. And you have now business arising from the previous AGM, previous general meeting. One is the clubs of the suspension, and the clubs still being suspended when they won't confirm. And while that discussion was being had, somebody came up and said, hey, let's move a motion to suspend this discussion until after,
lower down
the last agenda item. At that point, it's fine. You can move a motion. You can move a motion on anything within and if it's seconded, it's then put the floor
and put a vote.
To put a vote, unless it's it's a counter motion where the counter motion is entertained first. At that time, when that was put a vote, it came back 8-5, 1 abstention. The thing is with that is that they say that, all right, we won the vote. You make a vote to suspend the discussion about our illegal proceedings about a vote. And then the vote that you say won was not passed by the same 2/3 majority needed for the last one. So this, to move an item of the agenda, any part of an item of the agenda, you need a 2/3 majority. 851 is not 2/3. So I don't know if no one there, if the chairman, if no one in of the executive have a calculator of the phone though operate with if Me Too, what is called Me Too? If it's Me Too, they use it. I think even Me Too have a calculator. So you could check it and say we're not at 2/3 majority. So we cannot move any. No, the motion was not carried. Continue with the discussion. Let's air it out here now. That was not done.
It was still moved.
It was moved. And then straight from moving that, you're going to the election. So you deprive the clubs of not being able to vote. And it was illegally done. So the clubs not being able to vote was illegally done since 2020. And the matter of moving the discussion to get this sorted out was illegally done at this 2021 AGM. And that's my concern. you then deprive the clubs of the right to vote, and the legal process was had to install the new president, and that is where I made my objection, and I made a formal protest to the board. I made a formal protest to the TTFA. TTFA wrote back and said because of the constitution of the Super League, the bylaws of the Super League, they weren't able to intervene, which I understood. And then the board of the Super League then wrote back to me and said that I am not part of the Super League. I'm the co-owner of Malabar FC. So in terms of you have to be part of football for 3 out of the last 5 years to be eligible to contest for a position.
Right.
And so I did my letter based on being the co-owner on Malabar FC's letterhead. So I did my protest, my first official protest on that same letterhead, keeping consistency to let them know. They said my club is not part of the Super League. I am not part of the Super League. So they cannot entertain my protest. So what I'm saying is the actual AGM that I'm protesting, being a presidential candidate, is not being part of the Super League process. And the constitution that they are quoting for even says if a party outside, if the Super League has an issue with any party there outside, any association outside of the Super League, they could take the matter to the independent arbitration tribunal. So I don't even understand why they wrote back that letter, but they went even further to then threaten me or reprimand me to say that you are president of an association, you should know better than to try to make any problems within the Super League. And we may have to take you up with the TTFA for interference. And then quote the constitution of the TTFA in terms of interference.
So let me just get something straight. Your grounds for even entering the presidential race would have been the fact that you were involved in football at some level, albeit that your club was not a Super League member.
Correct. Once you are part of football for 3 out of the last 5 years, you can contest any election.
Football related. Whether that be the Super League, the Pro League,
TTFA.
the TTFA election, the secondary schools football, etc. And of course that would have been acknowledged, allowing you to even contest the election in the first place. Once the election was done, or you cease to have any footing, is that?
Well, that's basically claimed that I have no dealings with the TTFA after the Super League after the election is over. When in fact that is not so. If I have a problem with how the election was done and it was done illegally, I can raise a protest.
Because you are a part of the election.
A part of the election, correct. But they then say that's interference on my part, and I'm now trying to interfere in the Super League's business. And if they are accustomed doing things, because it's 3 years, so there's a norm, there's a pattern of doing things illegally and wrong, then that should continue, and I should not raise any qualms about it.
So at the end of it all, the vote or the discussion on the reinstatement of these clubs was moved down. The election happened, and what eventually happened at the AGM?
So the election happened. They had the election. Mr. Lee Davis won. I came second to him, and that process was over. And then they had the elections of delegates to the general meeting of the TTFA, which the clubs then again did not have
a chance at
to being part of. And when that was over, they then moved to the reinstatement of the clubs, right? At that point, after all the deliberations before, it was said by Mr. Dongna, observer in the meeting, there to give guidance and counsel to the chairman, which in my view was a conflict of interest, because Mr. Dongna, being at that meeting, being the president of referees, and Mr. Lee Davis being a vice president of referees associations as well, that's a conflict of interest. That's Mr. Dongna talking to a vice president of the same association, and giving guidance, and all the guidance being given, be it he may not have known, be it they might have make him believe that it was an extension of of a suspension and not an official suspension, the one that was gone in the past, it was still a conflict of interest. And Mr. Downer would have listened to all deliberations and informed the chairman and the person, well, someone raised a motion to reinstate the clubs. And he informed them and he basically cautioned them from using the word suspended in that motion because the clubs were in fact never suspended officially. You know what I'm saying? So they were cautioned not to use the word suspension. So the motion basically, I don't have the minutes wasn't sent out just yet. But the motion was something like the clubs would be given full bona fide membership back into the Super League after this point. And they moved the motion so that could be voted upon and happen. If they weren't suspended, and if the motion to reinstate them does not have the word suspension in it, then what were they for the last 3 years? The Constitution is clear. When a body is suspended and it's confirmed by the general meeting, this body is out of the league. And to be reinstated, there's a process
that you must follow.
You must follow. There's no motion for that. There's no motion to say come back in. So if they weren't suspended to be part of the meeting, there's no motion to bring them back in after the vote. And that is the wrong that happened at that AGM. And we are trying to let persons know, hey, we cannot continue to run football in this manner. This is the reason why football is in dire straits with when it comes to the management and the administration of football, and we need to do better. And that's the point, and I would take it to the highest level to ensure that this, and any judge, any arbitrator, any person looking at the facts, let's take all emotion out of it. Looking at the facts would say this was not done correctly. We need to call back a meeting, a AGM, whatever meeting, general meeting that you want to have, and let us get this thing right for the benefit of football. And that's just my take on it.
To your knowledge, just before we wrap this segment, to your knowledge, do you know if any of the clubs that were reinstated are in fact now compliant?
There are several clubs. There are about 4 out of the 7 clubs compliant, and they were compliant before the AGM. I know for sure Defence Force got a letter from TTFA saying that they are compliant to the TTFA long before. I think they missed that 6 months window by some days, which the membership would have illegally put place on them. And then there are clubs like Harlem, Phoenix for sure. I know it's also compliant. So there are clubs compliant currently out of the clubs.
I say that just to clarify for those looking on whether or not compliance remained an issue at least up to that point in the AGM.
I want you to understand too, not all the clubs being suspended. The first compliance issue was only 5 clubs. So there were 2 other clubs being suspended just for missing the season. That had nothing to do with being compliant.
Exactly as you said, I just wanted to sort of bring that juxtaposition as to this entire issue, whether it was about compliance, whether it was about missing the seasons, etc. But we will continue the discussion after a really short break right here on the Ascension Football Show, where we'll get a little bit further in the discussion with Mr. Edwards about the rights of clubs and whether or not they, in fact, do know what their rights are and whether or not, I guess, they exercise those rights to the benefit of themselves. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The situation we have here is that these characters, and I refer to them as pests, right? What they are doing is destroying our country, but not on my watch. No street, no turf, no block shall belong to these cockroaches. Right? It's no longer business as usual. Happy hour is over. If they don't fear God, at least they will fear Terminix.
Have you considered how your methods could impact on pests across the country?
I find we look after the rights of pests as opposed to the rights of the 1.3 million law-abiding citizens in Trinidad and Tobago. I wonder if Roach Ladden's son come here for carnival, if you'll interview him, eh?
But how could you defend one shot, one kill?
What? You want me to throw a pillow at him?
I didn't say that.
No, well, if a roach jumps in front of you now, what will you do?
Run.
Oh, Jesus, Lord Father.
Pests bothering you? Call Terminix at 672-5007 or 672-0042 or visit our website at terminix.co.tt for a free quote and consultation. Join our fight against pests.
Get in the game with Ascension. Quality for champions.
Ascension! Ascension! Premium quality and style make you stand out all the time. Ascension is quality for champions. Ascension fit is always right. Take your game to higher heights. Ascension got the quality for champions. So everybody say, yeah, oh. We wearing Ascension when we play. To run out on the field in style. What's the brand that we want? Ascension! 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 We wearing what we wearing is Ascension. Quality for a champion. Ascension! We wearing what we wearing is Ascension. Quality for a champion. Ascension! We wearing what we wearing is Ascension.
Get in the game with Ascension. Quality for champions.
Amante Del Cafe is located at Magnificent Mall, number 271 Southern Main Road, Vancouver. Amante Del Cafe. Happiness begins with brew.
Lasso Frame Maritime Limited, the best in marina services. At our facilities, security checks ensures that all vehicles are secured. Our newly renovated bathrooms are always kept in a clean working order. Need repairs and maintenance? We have you covered. Our qualified workmen will get the job done. Boat storages, from our marina, you can easily push off for a family sailing trip. Or out fishing with the boys. Or a fun DDI experience with friends. Boat repairs, secured parking, extensive camera system, boat charters, boat rentals, down the island parties. Contact us at 1-868-634-1653. Lasso Frame Maritime Limited, the best in marina services. Life's better on a boat.
Welcome back to the Ascension Football Show. I am Jassy Marik, sort of filling in for the regular host, who is in fact today's guest, Mr. Kieran Edwards, as we continue to air out a matter that would have taken place a couple of weeks ago as it pertains to the 2021 Trinidad and Tobago Super League annual general meeting. Mr. Edwards has contested the procedures of that meeting that would have led to the election of the current president of the association. So much so thinking about going to the Court of Arbitration for Sport to sort of have a look at what would have taken place at that meeting. But Mr. Edwards, all that you aired out today, all that you brought to light would certainly beg the question about clubs, associations, institutions in Trinidad and Tobago, in this instance in football, but in sport in general, about them knowing, perhaps not to the letter of the law, but knowing their constitutional right in the very first place that is afforded to them once they are members of these organizations such as the Trinidad and Tobago Super League. In your opinion, could that be better? Could that knowledge be better? Could that information and education level of the clubs be increased?
It should be better. It needs to be better. And we have to get to that point in terms of persons understanding their rights. The major issue within football is copy and paste. If we remove copy and paste from all computers and phones in Trinidad and Tobago, we'll be better in football. Because when we started the whole push in terms of making sure that every zone, every association, every member has a constitution back in about 2016, the TTFA hand down a constitution of the TTFA, Senate soft copy, and everyone copy and paste the exact thing from the TTFA, change the word TTFA to
whatever is the
wherever.
organization.
So if it's East Zone, they put it to East Zone. And there are many things that do not, it's not compliant. It doesn't.
It may not even apply.
It bears no merit in terms of the association. And the members had no part. So it's not a situation where we sat down and say, all right, clubs, this is the situation, what's going on here. This line, we are putting in this line here for this reason, and persons are part of the process. But they are doing this copy and paste and then bringing it back to the membership to approve, because the bodies cannot approve it. They need the general meeting to approve. So the clubs are just there in a general meeting and they're saying 80 points, knowing nothing about it, in a meeting that normally lasts 2 hours, and you have other things to get through, and they're just going through line item, just reading out line items, not being able to ventilate them and understand what they mean. And then persons would approve, because we need to have it to be compliant. So you approve it, you get it sent to email. Some of the associations may not even send it out to the membership. So you don't even have it unless you ask for it or lobby for it. And then most of the times the clubs really don't have that discussion in terms of their own meetings for the club to have an overview of it. Sometimes one member would be the guru in terms of constitution for a club, but they may pass away, they may move on from the club, and then the club is left with no one.
Or they may not even share the information.
They won't share. They don't share. So it's basically club is left without any direction in terms of what their rights are. And things like these things happen where Mr. LeCloy, Mr. Otley, a few persons would have constructed this constitution for the Super League. And the members had no idea in terms of what they really approved, because they approved a constitution that basically gives the independent tribunal, you're basically a last resort in Trinidad. There's no mention of the TTFA taking any dispute to the TTFA, which is crazy. So if a club, let's understand this. The tribunal is placed by the board. So the executive picks the persons, although it's deemed independent,
yeah.
but they are selecting the persons. And then they bring it to the general meeting to approve. So the board that you elect, now elect persons for you to approve. Obviously, you would approve the persons, your trustee board. And a year later, you have this issue for whatever issue, maybe against the executive, maybe against another club, and it doesn't go away, but you know you are right. The next protocol is CAS, where you need to maybe get 2,000 Swiss francs to even lodge a complaint, and then you have to pay for the arbitrators, maybe 1 or up to 3. You have to pay half of their cost to even take the matter, and you have to pay this up front. So you're talking about a club that is having
a community or grassroots football club.
Correct. That is holding a barbecue to get their uniforms.
Has a dispute and jumps from a local tribunal or none in this instance.
In many instances.
All the way to the Court of Arbitration.
Because this tribunal would have been non-existent for a while. So any issues, these same clubs would have had this issue for a while, and there's no tribunal to take the matter to. So you're telling them for the whole of 2021 that they needed to take this matter to CAS. Where they finding the funds? So that is a serious issue of what the members would have signed on to, but not having the knowledge or not going through it in depth with whoever constructed the constitution, and that's a major issue. And not just in Super League, but throughout Trinidad football. So much so that even with the normalization committee, one of FIFA mandates for the NC is to get the statutes of the TTFA in line with the statutes of FIFA, because we would have taken a constitution from somewhere and just copy and paste it and use it for us too, And it's not in line with what FIFA wants. It might have been an outdated one where they needed to get things in line.
How now, as you are considering some way, somehow getting your 2,000 Swiss francs to go to the Court of Arbitration, how do we educate these clubs, these associations, etc., to know the processes as outlined by the Constitution? Perhaps for whatever reason they may not have access to the Constitution, they may not want to go through that. How do you get them to understand, hey, that this is here in writing for a reason?
It's exactly what we are doing now. We have already acquired the funds to go to CAS, and that I'm just waiting to see what's happening with this independent tribunal. If they don't put that in place quickly, they would have to also acquire their funds as well. But we have acquired our funds. We have acquired a lawyer and gone through the whole process to take the matter to CAS. But we need to continue to do these things to let persons understand the importance of the Constitution and standing up for the Constitution. It's there for a reason. That's the backbone of how we operate as footballers, as football administrators. We are in a situation of bad governance when it comes to the TTFA. But it did not start in TTFA. All these persons that would have sat at the helm of the TTFA as presidents, as vice presidents, would have come through some system in most parts of the TTFA, because we'll have the Richard Timke, which would not have really been through but then we have David John Williams and the William Wallaces that would have come through the system of the membership of the TTFA. But if you're having these issues and persons not holding persons to account and not listening to the Constitution, you will have the issues that we had with David John Williams, where persons had to take him to court to get information. We'll have the situations of William Wallace, where the board approved one contract and he issued his own contract. You will continue to have this because persons will continue to frown upon the Constitution that binds them to the position that they hold. So in this situation here, we need to make sure that the Super League, the clubs in the Super League understands that their wrong was done. We need to fix it. And somebody needs to apologize to these clubs. It's 3 years. And these communities and these young men that would have been deprived of playing when you're playing Super League, the next step is to play professionally. When you play, the Super League means semi-professional football. When you're playing semi-professional football, your next step is playing professional football. If your community team is not playing that semi-professional football and you are not maybe good enough at that point because there's development. Dennis Lawrence struggled under Keith Leclerc in Malik to make Malik intercall team, but then went on to be the guy that took Trinidad and Tobago to a World Cup, because in development, players develop differently. So you may not be at the level in year 1 or year 2 in terms of your club and what's going on to play professionally, but over a period of time, your ability, persons see you now get opportunity. This is livelihoods of persons, you know. We're not talking about just a wrong in terms of the constitution. This is a wrong on young men that would have been able to earn a living off of football professionally was taken away in this matter. And we can't sit by, and there are a lot of institutional clubs within the league. We have police, we have army, we have UTT, we have prisons. They need to stand up on this matter. They cannot afford. Imagine if UTT would get all this information and vote against this matter. Then we have a serious problem in Trinidad and Tobago. Because this is not a club. This is not Jassie's club or Edward's club. This is an institution that is afforded the ability to play football and represent this institution playing football. So there would be a board in place to manage that. And if this board sends somebody to represent them and they are representing in terms of a illegal and corrupt manner, then we have an issue. So my real thing here is to get this out, let persons understand the wrong that occurred, take it up in terms of maybe the tribunal or CAS, let them make a determination, and then bring it back for the clubs to now have a decision and right the wrongs.
What is your intended outcome? What do you hope happens from all of this? Yes, you're looking at CAS down the road, but you are hoping, of course, that the powers that be come to some favorable conclusion.
I would love to have a discussion, a EGM, to discuss this matter and be put a motion for the membership to decide.
Full membership.
Full membership. I think that is where any general meeting is, a meeting of the membership. So it's to say full membership, that is where the problem lies. It don't know half membership. To be talking full membership and peace membership. The clubs were official clubs that were denied to vote. So you don't half membership that vote and bring in a president. It's the membership. That's what the general meeting is. So we want to have a general meeting to air these issues, to understand the wrongs, for persons to know that we cannot repeat this. And be able to say, all right, let us elect a president where the membership elects the president based on the Constitution. Just follow the Constitution. That's all I'm asking. Let's select delegates to the general meeting based on the Constitution, where the membership decides that, not the membership that I like or the membership that you like, but the membership of the TTSL. That is all. If that needs to be done by the executive that is there currently, we could do it. If it needs to be done by a tribunal, independent tribunal, we'll do it there. If it needs to be done in CAS, we'll do it there as well. But it needs to be done. And I am totally committed. Well, as you know, I'm totally committed to that cause. And many others, but I'm totally committed to that cause in terms of however the outcome of that election or the selection happens, that's totally up to the clubs. But because I thought we had 3 persons in the race, so it could go any way, but it needs to be done the right way, and that is my take on things.
All right, well, Karen, I want to certainly thank you very much for taking the time to shed some light on this very important matter as it pertains to the Trinidad and Tobago Super League, constitutional procedure, etc. And of course, certainly making your views, your strong views, well articulated and certainly really felt as it pertains to that matter. Don't forget, you can continue to view episodes of the Ascension Football Show on all our social media platforms, and of course, you can join the website. Look out for all updates on the website at www.theascensionfootballtournament.com. I'm Jassy Marique saying goodbye for now.